What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Project Potter. Welcome back to Man of Mischief, episode 4 of 6 here for Loki. My name is Kyle, your host. This is our Loki in review show, guys. We got a big one this time. So, if you guys haven't seen the show before, it's a quick recap of the episode. It is a Born to Rule award, which is the favorite character, and then the Get Help award, which is the least favorite character, and a score out of 10, guys. So we're going to kick it right off here. We remember last time Loki and Sylvie were going to try and get off the planet in their last ditch effort to get off. They were trying to get on the Ark, but they said, the Ark blows up and, there's this apocalyptic event, which is where the variants hide out, so there's no Nexus events or activity. So with that being said, at the end of the last episode, the Ark did blow up, even though they were trying to get on the Ark, which we knew would happen. Well, not knew would happen, but that's like how the timeline is set. And so the Lokis are like, shit, we don't know what to do. And so we opened this episode actually in Asgard, and I was like, oh, dude, real excited off the bat. I was like, let's go. Like, it pans over Asgard, it's really, really cool. And I was like, are we going to get a Ragnarok scene? What are we doing here? Are we going back? Is this a different Asgard? There's a little girl playing on the kind of the front steps or whatever. She's like playing with the ship, and this is, we find out Sylvie. And the TVA comes in and they're like, oh, there's the variant. And we're like, oh, like a little girl is a variant? And then we're like, oh, it must be Sylvie. So they take her, and this is like the TVA previous to what we've known. Obviously, like Sylvie was a little girl at the time. And the judge, I think she's the judge. I don't know her actual character name. I'll probably throw it in here. Who's excellent in this episode, in this series, really. She is like one of just the like the foot soldiers at this point. So she comes in, and then she's like bringing them over to, I guess, bringing Sylvie over to the judge. There's a really cool like sequence where we see like Sylvie, and she's like looking really scared and stuff, and she's going through all the same things that Loki went through in the pilot, where she has to go through the machine that melts you if you're a robot, which she's not, which also has a bigger meaning towards the end of this episode. And then like she goes through all the different things, but she's like going to be sentenced in front of the judge, and the current judge, the woman, she is like holding Sylvie, and then Sylvie like bites her and like kicks her or whatever, but she actually ends up stealing her like time portal or whatever, and she like knows how to use it somehow, and she sets her own portal to go back, either go back to her time or just being a variant. And so that's kind of like her big fail. The judge that we know, she is like, that was the one that got away. And so that's how Loki ends up, or not how Loki ends up, but that's how Loki starts. And we get that awesome Loki. Dude, the Loki intro is so cool. Not only the way it changes, but like the music, it just gets me hyped every time, dude. Also, this episode started with the Marvel intro music, which is, I feel like we haven't heard it in a little bit, because last week we didn't hear it. So like always awesome to hear like that, just that main like Avengers theme basically, or the main Marvel theme, I should say. So we go over to kind of present day, and Mobius is talking to the judge, and he's still trying to like, he's like, hey, let me talk to the variant Loki, and she's like, absolutely not. She's like, no way, she's too dangerous. And he's like, come on. He's like, if there's a mastermind here, he's like, I don't think it's our Loki, like regular Loki. And she's like, how about you stick with Loki? And she's like, we'll have someone else deal with the variant. Mobius is like, all right, I guess so. And he walks away, and then oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead here, guys. Before that, so we get the intro, and then before all that happens, so spoilers, I guess, we cut back to Loki and Sylvie, who are now just sitting on Lamentus 1, and again, really beautiful setup, like the purple background. And they're sitting there, and they're basically waiting to die, and it's an awesome visual, dude, because it's like they're like, it won't be long now, and they're sitting down, and they're looking, and there's like huge craters coming down. And they're like getting closer, and they have like a little conversation, but Loki really adores Sylvie, clearly. And there's like a mutual interest there, but Sylvie's kind of just sitting there defeated, and Loki sits down next to her, and they kind of hold hands. And then we see the crater come down, dude, and it's awesome because it's like that, the ash and dirt and everything, it's like obliterating everything in front of it, and like they're just waiting to die. And we knew they would get rescued, so as soon as they hold hands, it creates a huge Nexus event, like on the timeline. So they're looking, and like 100B15 is like, we gotta find the variants, where could they be? And they're looking through the whole timeline, and then there's a huge Nexus event. As soon as they touch hands, and it looks like they're almost gonna kiss, like a huge spike, and like we've never seen a Nexus event like that, which is really cool. And so that's how they find them. So they throw 2 time portals in there, And then there's like a second where Loki and Lady Loki, or Sylvie I should say, they're like standing in front of the portals, and I'm like, dude, go! But obviously they don't want to go back to the TVA because they know they're going to get captured there, but it's either that or get blown to smithereens on Lamentus 1. So I was like, run, but then it's funny because like they're ready to die and they're like happy, and then the portals come up and they are kind of saved, and then it cuts to them like being captured, and you're like, oh right, like you don't want them to die, but then it's like you also don't want them to get captured by the TVA. But it's great because we get Loki back with Owen Wilson, or Mobius, and then we get Sylvie back with just like the other agents there. So then, as I mentioned before, Mobius tries to convince the judge to talk to Sylvie, but he doesn't know Sylvie's name yet, and she's like, no, it's too dangerous. She's like, we can't let her escape again. And so she's like personally like, dude, I can't let this girl escape. She already did once, and now she's more dangerous, more powerful. Eventually we find out that I might be skipping ahead here, guys. Honestly, just watched it. I'm just gonna go through the big parts. We eventually find out that Sylvie can, well, we already knew this, but the TVA finds out that the girl who had her mind tapped into, I think it was 2 episodes ago, it might have been last episode, where Sylvie tapped into her mind, and they were like at the bar, and she was like, no, it's okay, just tell me. We find out in this episode that she can access memories, but she cannot create them, which we may or may not have known before, but now the TVA knows this. And it turns out that Mobius asks about, I think her name is C20, Mobius asks about her eventually, and she's like, oh, like, you know, her mind was completely warped. She's like, at the end, she couldn't even form any sentences. We later find out that this is a lie, but try not to jump too far ahead. So Loki and Mobius are back, and it's great, because Mobius brings him in there, and he's like, Loki. There's a great scene where he's like, oh, you betrayed me. He's like, I betrayed you. He's like, you betrayed me. And he's got the collar on, and Loki's like fighting through it. And there's like a red portal that comes open, and they go back into like the TV room, or the highlight room, whatever, where Loki saw like his whole life unfolded in front of him, where Owen Wilson like interrogates him. It's like a holding cell basically. And we see Loki say one more thing, or he's like, wait, and he's like, okay, he's like, what's it going to be? Is it going to be a cockroach line, or is it going to be something meaningful or whatever? And he says the TVA is lying to you, and that's all he says. And Owen Wilson like starts laughing a little bit, and he's like, throw him in there, and he throws him through the red portal, and he goes back to an old scene, and this is a never-ending loop of Loki getting punched, getting slapped, and then getting kicked in the balls or kneed in the balls continuously by like either like an old girlfriend, or just like someone who lived in Asgard, and he ends up cutting her hair off, and she's like, you're sick, and she's like, you're gonna be alone forever, you know that? And she calls him like all these names. And the first time it happens, he's like, oh, he gets down, and then she keeps looping back around. So it's like a never-ending time loop. And he's like, time loop, yes. So we then cut to, a lot of the episode is focused around like Mobius and the judge, and there's like a lengthy sequence where Loki says TVA is lying to you, and then he starts to kind of question it. And Owen Wilson is really good in this episode. First of all, the music, the score, and the actors and just the framing in this episode, I think, were the best of the series. It was awesome. Like from the get-go, I was in there. It just felt like next level, like a higher. And it's episode 4 of 6, so usually the production value is going to be higher for the later episodes. But I was really impressed with this one. So Mobius is like, now that he knows, he's gotten that line, and where he like initially he's like, oh, Loki's just lying. But then Loki's like, he was so sincere when he said it that Mobius is like, starts to question things. So he's like, he starts to push the judge a little bit, where he's like, you know, why didn't you let me interview the variant? And they're like, well, the variant's too, or Sylvie. And they're like, the variant's too dangerous, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, and it's just this whole thing. Eventually we get a scene, I think it's in the same scene where he's starting to figure out, Mobius is starting to figure out like what is real and what isn't. So he's just gone along with the TVA for so long, and he told Loki, I think last episode or the episode before, like, oh, we were all created by the Timekeepers, and we were all here at TVA. Sylvie, if we remember, told Loki on Lamentus 1, hey, the TVA is all variants, and the TVA like kidnapped them and erased their memories. And so Owen Wilson switches their little like iPad thing or whatever that controls time. It's like a tablet basically. He says, oh, I'll have another drink or whatever, and then like the judge gets up, and while she's not looking, he switches them. And so eventually he sneaks off to the library and he like opens up a tablet and he finds out that C20, who is like the girl that got her mind touched by Sylvie. Remember the judge said that like her mind was wrecked, she couldn't even form words. There's like an interrogation tape or whatever that he opens up, and she's just like fine, and she's like, look, she's like, I was a variant, she's like, we're all trapped here. She basically starts spilling everything that Sylvie said, and she's trying to say like, no, like you don't understand, we're all variants. And the judge like freaks out and she stops the tape, and then it says deceased, so I think they just killed her, they purged her or whatever. But this confirms Loki's theory, or what Loki's information, and so Mobius is like, oh my god, he was right. And so then he goes and gets Loki. Loki's in the never-ending loop, and he's like on the ground. It's funny because he's like yes I know, he's like, I'm a conniving person, blah blah blah. And there's actually a moment in there where he tells I forget the girl's name, Sylph or something, I don't know. He tells her like, you know what, he's like, I am alone because he's like, I'm a narcissistic asshole. And it's like Loki is seeing himself, and he's like, he just came off like basically the love of his life on Lamentus 1, and then he was thrown into where he thought he was going to die holding her hand, and that was going to be his story, which is much better than getting choked out by Thanos, of course. And instead he gets pulled into the TVA, and like suddenly he is just stuck in this loop of everyone treating him like shit, and he's like, he finally sees like, oh, I've deserved this, like I've been a bad person, like I've been manipulative and trying to make all these illusions and all those things. So really cool moment where Owen Wilson, he's like, all right dude, he's like, he gets that video, and now he's like, all bets are off. So he goes in, he brings in Loki, he's like, you were right about the TVA the whole time. He's like, I'm sorry, but you were right the whole time. He's like, come in here, and they're talking in like the time loop, and we're assuming that the timekeepers don't know that, but they do come back in through. He's like, we're gonna take down the TVA, we're gonna find out what's really going on. And so it's like Mobius and Loki teaming up, and we're like, here we go, this is like the buddy cop, this is what we wanted. It's just like their chemistry is so good. So they come back through the portal, and the judge is waiting for him, and waiting with like all of the time guards or whatever. And she's like, I think you have something that belongs to me. And he's like, oh, he's like, I just realized I switched it with you. And Owen Wilson is so charming, and it's like he's trying to talk his way out of this one, and she's like, nah, dude. So he like hands over the tablet or whatever, and they switch it back. And then she's like, I think she says like, purge him or whatever. And then shocking turn of events, they hit Mobius with the stick that disintegrates you from the inside. And I was like, oh, I did not expect that, dude. And Loki is like actually visibly upset from it. And so they take Loki away. We go back to the variant, and Sylvie's sitting there, and Hunter B-15, I think is her name, the cop that I wasn't crazy on in the pilot, but has kind of been a little better lately. She's in charge of Sylvie, and so she's like, hey, she goes in there, and she's like, come with me. And she does a portal, and they go back to Roxcart, and we know this is the apocalyptic scene in, I think it's 2058 or something, Alabama. And so we know now that if they need to discuss something in private or not affect the timeline, they just go to the apocalyptic events. Now, how 100B15 found that out, I don't know, or if the TVA just knows that or whatever, but they go there, and she's like, hey, you were in my mind earlier, and she's like, I saw something. She's like, what was that? She's like, was that something you created? And Sylvie says, no. She's like, you were all variants. She's like, the TVA kidnapped all of you and erased your minds. And she's like, no, that's just an illusion. And she's like, no. She's like, seriously, I can't create memories. I can only tap into what was there. She's like, that was your past life. And she's like, let me see it. She taps in again. And then she's like, it's like a nice moment. And she's like, oh, I look so happy. And then she like unconnects, and she's like, okay, what are we gonna do? And that's when you know 100B15 is like on our side. So they go back through. Eventually the Lokis are taken over to finally going to see the timekeepers, and so the judge takes them, and it's cool because both Lokis are there, and we finally get a glimpse of like the timekeepers, and it's like this big misty like arena room basically, and there's like 3 timekeepers, and 2 of them are like fish guys, and then one is like kind of all powerful. I mean, I'm glad the episode ended the way it did, because I was like, oh, okay, timekeepers look pretty cool. But then like the first one was really cool, and I could hear him cool, and he had a nice like echoey voice. And then the other 2 guys are like fish people, and they had it was hard to understand what they were saying, and they just looked kind of weird. And I was like, oh, I hope these aren't actually the timekeepers, because that would be disappointing. But we think they are. They go there, and then Loki's like, just kill us now. He's like, I've been killed so many times I don't even remember. Like I lost track. and they're like, oh, we're not going to kill you now or whatever, or they, like, I forget what the dialogue sequence is, so shame on me for not remembering that. But they have the collars around them, so they can't do their magic or anything, and they're trapped, and Sylvie goes to like yell at them, and she's like, I think you're scared, and she keeps getting looped back with a judge, because they got the collars on there, so they can't really move, because she just keeps looping them back. And so Sylvie is like, she kind of gives the judge like a look, and then Hunter B15 comes through, and like she's got her own remote, so she like disables the collars because the judge is like pressing the button, it's not working, and then the collars drop off, and I was like, let's go. And I think she says, for all time, always, and I was like, oh, that's a dope line, dude. Like, that's a great line. And she like throws a sword, which is kind of weird because they threw the sword back and forth, but the Loki collars come off, and so now it's like, let's go, dude. And so there's like a fight between like the foot soldiers and the judge, and the judge says like, this is how I'm gonna finish the job, and she faces off against Sylvie, and Sylvie's like confident, she's like, dude, you're not gonna fucking take me down, like, please. But they have like the batons there, and they can like purge or plunge everyone, so which is really cool. We don't know what this does yet, so we don't know if it's like a permanent death or if it's sending them somewhere or what's going on. We get a little bit of this in the post-credit scene, but eventually there's this big fight, and Sylvie and Loki, of course, take them all down, and then Sylvie actually ends up like knocking out the judge on the ground there, and she throws like a spear or whatever at the head timekeeper, and his head comes off, and I was like, oh, interesting. And then like the two next to it, like they're clearly like machines, like you see like Chuck E. Cheese, and they just break and fall to the side, and then the head goes down, and she picks up the head, and she's like, oh my god, it's just like a mindless android, she calls it. So you see like the wires sticking out, so we're like, these are not the real timekeepers, which is good, because they looked cool, but I was like, I'm glad this isn't like the big reveal, because I would have been okay with it, but it's also like, it would have been anticlimactic, I think, which, oh, it's so cool. So Loki and Sylvie are standing there, and he's like, oh, that's fake, it's fake, and she's like, wow, I thought this was it. She's like, I don't know what to do now, and like their whole plan is kind of spoiled. And Loki says, oh, because when he was talking to Mobius, I'm sorry guys, I say sorry, but I do it every time. I skipped over like an important part where Loki is talking to Mobius, and they're sitting down, and he's like, he tells him like, you guys are all variants. He's like, the timekeepers kidnapped you and erased your memories, and Owen Wilson's like starting to believe him, and he's like, look, he's like, Sylvie can only tap into memories that were there, not, she can't create them. And Owen Wilson says like, oh, he's like, look at you, you're falling in love with yourself. He's like, you're the biggest narcissist I've ever known. He's like, you literally fell in love with yourself. And he's like, you guys created a nexus that like, you know, could take down the whole TVA and all that stuff. So this was kind of at the beginning of the episode, but I just want to say like, this is where Loki tells him like, this is what's going on, dude, like I promise you. And so this kind of gets Owen Wilson on his side too. But kind of jumping back here to the finale, guys. So Loki, because he admits to Owen Wilson, he's like, wow, you're crazy in love with her, aren't you? And he's like, what? No. He's like, I don't know. Is it a partner? I don't know. And so Loki finally gets a moment to talk to Sylvie, and he's like, he grabs her hand and he's like, Sylvie, I need to tell you something. And we're like, oh, here it is. And he's like, and he gets closer and he's like, this is new to me too. And he's really nervous, and he goes to like tell her that he loves her. And then we get, I think, the shocker of the episode, where all of a sudden Loki's like looking at her, and then the camera's like in front of them, and he starts disintegrating from the inside, dude. And the judge, who was knocked out, not for long apparently, she purged him with the baton, and I was like, oh my god. And I was like, but then I was also like, okay, well obviously he's not dead, because you wouldn't kill the main character with 2 episodes to go, probably. But then I was also like, unless you're gonna have Sylvie take over it for the Loki series. But I kind of wish we didn't get a post-credit scene for this one, but it was cool anyway. He's gone, and so it's just Sylvie and the judge now, and Sylvie like easily takes her over. She's like, aha, and then Sylvie just like flips her wrist or whatever, and she's like, so she's like, oh, just do it. She's like, just purge me. And she's like, no. She's like, you're gonna tell me everything. And she like aims at her, and that's how the episode ends. And I was like, ooh, damn, dude, like, because now I want to know what's going on, because obviously like there's crazy things happen to TVA. But we do get a post-credit scene where Loki wakes up, which I kind of wish we didn't get, because I would rather have been like, okay, he's probably not dead, but where is Loki? What's he doing? So he wakes up, in a post-credit scene, and he says, "Where am I?" He's like, "Am I dead?" And someone says, "Not yet, but you will be if you don't come with us." And we get a pan over, and there's like a really old Loki. There's like kind of like a Thor-looking Loki, and then there's like a little kid Loki with like a pet alligator with Loki, like the Loki horns. And I was like, "Oh, dude, I don't know if these are just like, obviously they're variations of Loki. This is multiverse Loki, really, really cool." So I'm really excited for that. I don't know if it's supposed to be like famous people or people who have played Loki in the past. I don't know, but that's kind of how the episode ends. It looks really cool, and so the Lokis are all teaming up, and it should be awesome for the last 2 episodes. Okay, guys, the Born to Rule award for this one, it's got to go to Owen Wilson as Mobius, dude. He is so good in this one. I mean, I love that Loki tells him, it's funny because there's like a back and forth, and Owen Wilson is telling him, like, "You've lied 50 times in the last 5 minutes." He's like, "I can't believe a word you're saying." And Loki is actually telling the truth for once, and he's like, "I'm not lying right now." And it's you see like this struggle where he's literally like, "Dude, I'm not lying. Like, I'm telling you," but you know, Owen Wilson is like, "Of course you're lying, dude. You always lie." Their back and forth is awesome. He's always challenging Loki, and it's like, I wish we got a little bit more of them together. But I love how he just starts like playing detective role, where he like starts figuring out like, okay, well, I'm going to switch these tablets, and then he finds out like, oh, Loki was right, and then he goes in there, and now he's like, now he's questioning the TVA, and now he's wondering what's going on, and why is the judge covering this up, and why are there fake timekeepers, and it's crazy. And obviously we knew that people were staying away from the timekeepers, and they were like, why can't we see the timekeepers in person? It's like, well, don't worry about it. It's like, because they're just robots back there. But why are they robots? That's what's going to be crazy. But yeah, Owen Wilson was so good. I can't imagine that this is the last we see of him. He does say right before he's purged, he's like, you said, you asked me where I'd want to go anywhere in the timeline. He's like, I just want to get on a jet ski and go. And they brought up the jet ski again, dude. And I'm like, if Owen Wilson does not ride a jet ski before the series is over, I'm going to be pissed at Marvel. But I just thought his performance stood out the most out of everyone, and he was just excellent. And I love this character of Owen Wilson because he's not really playing the comedic role. This is just a great role for him, and it's different from what he usually plays. But I think he just stood out this week the most out of anybody. Okay, guys, the Get Help Award for this week. I have to give it to the judge actually, because I didn't really see her motivations. I think she's gonna play a bigger role now. But the fact that she was just like, oh, I need to finish the job, because I get it that she let Sylvie escape when she was little, but it's like, now she's like vengeful, but she's kind of, I don't know, she just seems like, I don't really agree with her motivations, where it's like, why wouldn't you work more? What are you hiding from Mobius, And you work at Mobius, and you're pretending to be like his coworker, and then suddenly you're like, purge him because he knows too much. And it's just like, she's playing the villain, which is a good twist, but I don't know, it's not the actress's ability at all, it's just the character. I hope that we get some good explanation next week, because I think she's just kind of like a weak, kind of a surprise twist character, but like just a weird one-dimensional villain in a sense. So excited to see where that goes next. Okay, guys, for a score for this one, I loved this episode. I think this was the best one of the series so far. This is going to be a 9.8 for me. I thought it was awesome. I thought the visuals were awesome. I thought the score was amazing. It got me hyped from the beginning when it showed Asgard, and I was like, oh, dude, give me some Ragnarok or something. I hope we get a big cameo from someone in the MCU throughout this one. Even if it's just a quick scene of like Thor or Cap or Iron Man. It'd be awesome to see Robert Downey again. Like, Thor would make the most sense, of course, but or even if we get like Meek or Korg or like someone in like the Thor Loki universe, that would be awesome. Or Captain Marvel, or now, but it's like full on multiverse now, dude. We're seeing a bunch of Lokis team up with Loki now, and it's like, oh, dude, they could really end high. I gotta be honest, the first episode I was really high on for what it could be. Second and third episodes I was like kind of lukewarm on. I didn't hate them by any means, but second episode I was down on a little bit. Last week was pretty good. This one I think was right back up towards the pilot, where I was like, wow, this is really excellent television. The one thing I didn't think was great was the fight scene in the timekeeper room. The choreography was really bad in that one. I think it felt very low budget and like just very awkward. But yeah, I mean, I love this episode from start to finish. They always end in a cliffhanger. And now she's like, you're gonna tell me everything, and it's like, oh. And then to get that post-credit scene, I don't know how I feel about that post-credits with Loki, because I love that we get the multiverse Lokis. That's really cool. But I don't love that we saw that right away, because I'm like, I would have liked to have known, is Loki dead, or where did he go? Like, I don't know. It's really cool, but yeah, this episode was the best one, I think, of the series by far, and just really enjoying the show. Okay, guys, that's another episode of Man of Mischief. That's episode 4, so we only have 2 episodes left, guys. Thanks for checking out Project Potter. Thanks for checking out the review. Really excited to see where this goes. I love these Marvel miniseries. Are just, even when there's a bad episode, it usually bounces back strong. But between WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, and this now, it's just been so good, and it's been like really scratching that itch for me. For MCU. So while we're waiting for like Black Widow to come out, and then like just the next Doctor Strange movie and Spider-Man 3 this December, so like this is just a really good like appetizer for those, and also builds on the universe that we know, and just makes other things so much better. Like all of the Thor movies now, I just want to go back and watch parts of Loki, and yeah, it's just awesome. But thanks for checking out the channel, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell notification, go check out the other content on the channel, and until next time, guys, peace.